What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. We hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are starting to get excited because the Dallas Cowboys visit the Buffalo Bills on Sunday afternoon. It is a 3:25 p.m. Central Standard Time kickoff. It's going to be dark early on in Orchard Park. This game, quite frankly, is going to look beautiful, but it is probably going to feel stressful because while the Bills' record is not that impressive, they are a much better team than meets the eye. I believe I've said all week long on our podcast, on our shows, on our videos, on my Bleacher Report streams, on social media. I think this is the most difficult game remaining across the regular season, obviously, for the Dallas Cowboys. I think if they're able to get through this with a win, it doesn't obviously suggest that they're going to go undefeated throughout the rest of the regular season and hopefully into the playoffs, but I do think it is impressive. These last two games for the Cowboys were important because of the implications associated with beating the Seahawks. We talked about that. And obviously against beating the Eagles because of the NFC East rivalry and NFC East title race, et cetera, et cetera. So while the Bills and Dolphins don't present the same implications relative to the NFC playoff picture, these are two frankly, better teams than the Cowboys have just played. Buffalo and Miami present a more difficult two-game challenge than Seattle and Philadelphia did, relative to who all these teams are in our current moment, which is why I'm so fearful of the Buffalo Bills, to be frank. But what do I know? I cover the Dallas Cowboys here at SB Nation, and I have a very good friend in JSpence the King, who you can follow on Twitter at JSpence the King. We'll link to his Twitter down below, who covers the Buffalo Bills for Buffalo Rumblings, SB Nation's Buffalo Bills site. JSpence and I have done some podcasting together in the past. I've given him a hard time about the Bills sometimes. He's a great follow. He's a great friend, and he was kind enough to offer me some time and offer us some time to give us a bit of a 101 on who the Bills are in this exact moment. So we're going to play that interview for you now. If you'd like, you can also listen to this interview on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Make sure to subscribe on Apple devices, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, let's go ahead and get to it. Here is JSpence the King from Buffalo Rumblings. Very pleased now to be joined by the one, the only, the legendary, the dashing, the debonair, the holiday filled with cheer from Buffalo Rumblings. It is one of my very good friends, JSpence the King. JSpence, welcome to Blogging the Boys.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to get on and talk with you. And you know, you give me a hard time, but I enjoy it.
I give you a hard time this season because of how I have felt about the Bills. You and Matt Warren are the biggest Bills fans that I know. Obviously, Matt from SB Nation. And I feel like I saw something in the Bills that you all did not want to see in the offseason. And I equated the Bills to the Cowboys in saying that, their season fell short last year because they didn't have enough playmakers outside of Stephon Diggs. And Dalton Kincaid, obviously, cool dude, but it felt like I loved the trade for Brandon Cooks. And I was like, why weren't the Bills the team to get DeAndre Hopkins or Odell Beckham Jr., or whatever you wanted? And so all season long, when it was like, they don't have anybody, it was like, yeah, I know. And so I was kind of enjoying the mob that was kind of circling around the Bills. I think the peak was probably the Broncos loss on Monday Night Football, but I'm back. That's what I'm here to tell you. I'm back as the Cowboys get ready to face them themselves.
Yeah, and you know what? I will say, I'll go on record and say you were kind of right, not kind of right. You were right about that. The Bills, you kind of, I feel like the team got excited about Gabriel Davis a couple years ago in the Chiefs playoff game when he had like that all-time game, right? And then and then even last season, he had a game against the Steelers, and he had some other moments where he kind of showed some flashes where it's like, okay, he could be our wide receiver too. But I think what we've seen now, he's been in the league a few years now. His statistics pretty much mirror what they have every single year. And I think as much as sometimes we want guys to grow or develop into things that they're just not. And I think we all wanted Gabe Davis to be a real wide receiver too. I just think that the guy stretches the field, and we have who we have in Gabriel Davis. And then after that, I think this season, I'm a little disappointed because I do think that our weapons now should kind of result in a better record. Like you mentioned, Kincaid, I think James Cook is doing an absolute amazing job. This is the best run game the Buffalo Bills have had since LaShawn McCoy was in the Bills jersey, and we're 7-6. So, there's optimism in some areas, and then there's this side of me where I'm like, I don't like it. I'm not happy.
This is a weird game and a fun game. And we were talking right before we started recording how it's the holidays, and so that kind of adds to the potential fun or existential dread if your team isn't doing well. I wouldn't put the Bills in that camp, so I know it probably feels like the sky is falling. But the Bills had a great week, obviously, with the win in Kansas City, despite the Chiefs petulance about it. And then everything kind of broke their way as far as all the wild card standings were concerned. But in
Mhm.
some ways, you mentioned how the Bills kind of maybe thought too much of one moment. I know a lot of people have accused them of chasing the 13 seconds game. Something I've said a lot in the past was I felt like the 2015 Cowboys tried to pick up exactly where Dez caught it at Lambeau Field. Like they built their team like they could just start right there. And
Mhm.
you can't. Like you have to climb the mountain all over again. I do think the Bills have kind of learned that lesson as this has gone on. And I apologize on behalf of all Cowboys fans because last year was really annoying with the Dak interceptions. It was super annoying whenever, people would come for him. And so Josh Allen has kind of picked up that crown. And I don't really feel the need to get in the way of that 18 wheeler coming for him. You know what I mean? Like, because it's kind
Mhm.
of fun to see somebody else deal with it. But I do feel like Josh Allen has been the victim of these things, and the Bills have been these victims of these things. And so, like, that's why I'm not as down on them. I think the win in Kansas City, the ending aside, was really impressive. I mean, that is something that not a lot of teams can do when the going had gotten as tough as it had for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you look at the last three games, the Bills have kind of been on the upswing in general. You beat the Jets like that. You go back and then I know we lose to the Eagles, but let's face it, the Eagles are one of the. I know you don't want to say this, but the Eagles are one of the best
How
teams in
dare you?
football. So it's tough. You lose that game, but it was a close game, so you have some optimism. The offense starts to look good, and then this last game you mentioned against the Chiefs, you know. It's always a big deal to go into Kansas City and to beat Patrick Mahomes. So, and then with Miami losing the game, and like you said, everything just kind of fell the way it's supposed to fall for the Bills. So if all the if everything aligns, all the stars align properly, and if we can pull out a win this weekend, the Buffalo Bills are in prime position to actually challenge Miami again for the division and not just try to fight and scrape for a wild card position. So we'll see. We play them to end out the season. I think I was excited all season, and I'm in every game. I'm into it. They pulled me right back in. But I think where I'm at right now is that I love Josh Allen, and I know you mentioned the turnovers and you mentioned all this stuff, and he did take that from Dak. But I think it's one of those things where it's like all year there's so much drama. Like there's
Yeah.
just every week there's something. So like you mentioned the interception, and it's like it's probably the thing I talk about the least when it comes to Josh Allen. When it seems like the national media is talking about it so much, and I don't know. I think it's a crazy argument that people try to have when you lead the league in touchdowns, you lead the league in yards, you lead the league in all this other stuff, but you want to say one thing, and it is a negative stat. You don't want turnovers for anybody on your team, but I tell you, I'll take 35 touchdowns. For the year, you give me that in 3,800 yards going into this weekend. I'm taking it, so it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather live and die by that sword than, be on the other end of the spectrum. Like it's
Hmm.
it's it's this the kind of shake of things. And so the fact that, and that's what our argument as Cowboys fans was last year, like the fact that people were like, "Oh, he's clearly trash because of this," is just like ridiculous.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. I saw you had a tweet last week when the Sean McDermott stuff popped up, and you tweeted something again. I'm paraphrasing. It was like, "I'm so tired of talking about anything other than Josh Allen being awesome." Um,
Man.
it has been I was going to ask you, we actually just kind of started talking about football. I was going to ask you what the best television show you've watched this year was, which you're free to answer. But the Bills have been like, your classic HBO drama. I feel like this, season long with all sorts of different controversies, both on and off the field.
They have everything from the Von Miller stuff to this article that comes about, or that comes out about Sean McDermott, to Josh Allen and his girlfriend breaking up, to him getting a new girlfriend, to, I mean, like the list go. And then one of your favorite cornerbacks, I'm sure, his brother's in Buffalo, and he tweets some stuff out, and then it's just like every week, man. And so you're right, it is a HBO drama. For me, I've watched quite a bit of TV this year. I've tried to purposely take time. I found myself in doing this podcast and writing more, and then I still have a full time job. So I found myself kind of losing time, and I would just work, work, work. So this year, I've actually started to schedule time to kind of watch TV or watch movies or just do things that kind of free my brain up. And I probably have a tough time to pick just one because I've been binge watching so many. But if I'll go with one, I think I'll go with you know what? I'm gonna go with it's a spinoff off the show Power. I'm gonna go with it's Tommy Show. I forget the exact name of it now. I just call it Tommy. I don't know.
Okay. Well, not DeVito. He's the popular name right now, but
DeVito's that
respect.
dude.
Yeah.
DeVito's that dude.
That's great, and that's smart to obviously schedule some time. I'm like halfway through like 6 movies because like I'll start one and then I'll get busy. Like I'm
Yep.
halfway through the second Spider-Verse movie right now, and I've been meaning to pick it up for like 3 weeks, and I just haven't done it
Yeah,
because
you got to schedule that time, man. You
yeah,
got to do it.
that's well said. So like I said, I'm kind of back on the Bills, even though it seems like people aren't. I wanted to ask you. I saw on the Bills subreddit because I like to browse all the other team subreddits, partly to experience their pain and misery, but also to kind of see the pulse of each team's fan base. One Bills fan, and I hate when people do this, like when people will see a take from one fan and they act like that fan speaks for the entire fan base.
Everyone.
So one Bills fan that people were talking about like how they saw this game going on Sunday. And one Bills fan said, well, this isn't technically a must win for us. I don't know how any Bills fan could possibly feel this way at this point. I get that it's a non-conference game, and I get that the Bills were afforded a bit more room for error because of all the losses that all the wild card contending teams had over the course of the weekend. But like this has to be must win if you want any kind of shot, particularly at winning the division, but at the very least to be a playoff team in general.
Yeah, to me, in my opinion, and I respectfully disagree with whoever that Bills fan was because I feel like at this point, the Bills are in the playoffs right now. You in order to stay alive, you have to win every single game, and it's going to be tough. It's a gauntlet, but to say that it's not a must-win game, they're probably just looking at the fact that Miami kind of gave us a little bit
Right.
of a cushion with that loss. But at the end of the day, I still look at the AFC as a very crowded conference. You look at all the 7-6 teams, you look at the 8-5. It's too many bunched together. So you take one game and you lose it, you're putting space in between you and that wild card position. And to me, I think the Buffalo Bills if Super Bowl was a conversation for them right now, they need to be having conversation. If I'm Sean McDermott, I'm having conversation every single week about how many games to the Lombardi. I'm not talking about anything else. We have this many games to win until the Lombardi. If you're talking about this is not a must-win game, I don't know what you're watching. I don't know what you're watching.
You got to do what the NBA teams do and put like the 16 numbers like on the banner.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like you just got to like
Yeah.
cross them off. Like that's exactly what you got to do. Are you a Suns fan, by the way? I've always wanted to know.
I like the Suns. I like Devin Booker, and obviously since KD is out here, I like him
Right.
too. But I grew up a Laker fan. Magic was my first favorite
Okay.
basketball player. But yeah, I like the Suns.
I'm cool with that. Okay, so as it relates to this must-win game, it's in Orchard Park. It's massive. This has the potential to be a really beautiful game, right? Like it's. I
Yeah.
know the weather doesn't call for like a incredibly cold or windy day. Obviously,
Hmm.
you and I are talking on Tuesday, so anything could change. But the Bills' home uniforms versus the Cowboys' whites. Obviously, everybody knows about the '90s, Super Bowls and things like that.
It's gonna be fun. Man.
It has the potential to just be really, really, really cool. You mentioned obviously that you thought the Eagles were one of the best teams in the NFL. Cowboys just throttled them. What is
Hmm.
your fear level of this game coming at it from a Bills fan perspective? Like, are you more afraid of the Cowboys than you were the Chiefs, than you were the Eagles? I mean, like, where does it kind of rank for you?
Well, when I say this, I promise to God, I'm not saying I don't mean this in a way where I'm trying to sound cocky or like I don't care about any other team.
At
I
JSpence the
I
King on
honestly
Twitter for
think
anyone who wants to drag
at me, come at me. But no, but seriously, the way I see it is like, honest to God, if the Buffalo Bills don't beat themselves, I think it's tough for any team to beat them.
That's
And I
fair.
think when you look at all of the games throughout the season, you mentioned the Eagles. We lost that game by ourselves. You talk about the Broncos, which was like the lowest of lows for us. 12 men on the field on a kick that was actually missed. You go back, like I can go down each game
Right.
and show you. And so, but the thing is, when Josh Allen simply just takes what the defense gives him. I'm sorry, my dog. I don't know what just happened.
That's okay. I
But
got you.
all right. Well, I just wanted to apologize to your audio, the listeners by audio, because they're rude. But when you factor in all those things, it's like, look, when Josh Allen is on and he's taking what the off or what the defense gives him, and not try to take the chunk play every time, or not try to be amazing every single moment, and just literally be methodical, go down. It's tough for guys to stop the Bills. It just is. So on that sense of it, where Josh Allen doesn't try to do too much, and then also Sean McDermott, I've been a huge supporter of Sean McDermott. I've been a huge supporter of Sean McDermott. This has nothing to do with the article, with what I'm
Right.
about to
You're,
say.
you're safe. Don't worry.
It has nothing to do with the article. I love Sean McDermott as a person. I think that he's a great leader of men. And over the years that he's been in Buffalo, he completely changed the culture and expectation for the fan base in the community. I love it. However, I'm just at this place now. I did a pod a couple weeks ago where I asked a question. I'm like, is Sean McDermott the NFL's Mark Jackson? And
Mm.
the comparison is to the point where Mark Jackson drafted Steph Curry. He drafted Clay and Green. He put the foundation of what we see as, if you want to call, I don't know how everybody views it, whatever. They've won several championships. To me, they're a great team. The Buffalo Bills have a foundation. Maybe now we need a Steve Kerr who can unlock that superstar in Josh Allen. I don't know, but I'm just, for me, I think Sean McDermott is holding the Buffalo Bills back, and that's why we're 7-6 as opposed to winning the division right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. Like, I had walked out a little bit on the Bills. I was a little bit more flagrant with Matt about that than I was with you. But I'm if I'm back on anything like all the way, it's Josh. Josh is the undeniable like metronome of things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But the McDermott of it all is fair to doubt, and I think that's what gives me confidence. Like you mentioned, the 12 men on the field penalty, the lack of bravery at the end of the game of regulation against Philadelphia. I know that the Bills won last week, but the handling of things on the positive side of the 2-minute warning against Kansas City, like, what are you doing? I know that people think that Mike McCarthy is this like oaf or whatever, but like I really trust Mike McCarthy in the coaching battle. And that's where this game kind of reminds me of the last time that Dallas and Buffalo played, which you recall was on Thanksgiving 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the like break point of the Jason Garrett era. Like the Cowboys were really kind of losing steam and losing steam and losing steam. And then Buffalo just embarrassed them as they kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, that was like the announcement of like, okay, the Bills are back. Like, the Bills are like, we have a seat at the table, and they've obviously been rolling ever since. And a week later on Thursday Night Football, Dallas got embarrassed by the Chicago Bears, and Mitchell Trubisky ran all over them, who I'm sure you love Mitchell Trubisky, obviously, for the 1 year. And it felt like they were going to fire Garrett after that Thursday night game, and they didn't, but they ultimately didn't bring him back after the year. And I agree with you. I do feel like kudos Sean McDermott. I remember seeing a tweet right after he got hired. He got like a standing ovation when he walked into the Bills building. And I remember thinking like, this is a little cheesy, but it kind of makes sense. Like I don't love Sean McDermott's pass because it hurt me greatly, but his time in Philadelphia with Jim Johnson, like they tortured Tony Romo. They were so great defensively. Yeah. And so I always, even in Carolina, I mean, that Thanksgiving Day game in 2015, when the Panthers, that was Tony Romo's last career start ever. I mean, like he always had the answer for Tony Romo, and that obviously hurt me a lot. So I do feel like Sean McDermott, to your point, may have been the guy to like get them out of the basement. But now you do have a seat at the table. You are among the NFL's elite. It might be time for somebody else. And I do think that's the biggest X factor, not just in this game, but maybe any game the Bills play the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. Now, what I'm hoping is one of a saying, like my grandfather used to always say, in life, you either need inspiration or desperation. I'm sure somebody else said it, but he stole it. But he says it a lot. And but I feel like now, I think the Bills have tried. I think they found both. And hopefully this is a turning point so they do make it to the playoffs, and I hope they do go on a run. I'm not as confident as I normally would be, but I think they're inspired just because of the time of the year that it is and how the offense is starting to turn it around. But I think this desperation in this article that came out about Sean McDermott, I think they're rallying around him. So I think they now are kind of saying we're going to go win this season for coach. And if that's the case, then don't fire him next year. Keep him. If he can inspire the team that way. But right now, I just don't have that confidence, man. I'm like, let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and that's fair. And I mean, the Bills, I talked about this on a different podcast. They, to me, are the kind of opposite version of the Eagles. I think this has been proven over the last 2 weeks. Like the Eagles were not as good as the 10-1 record would have indicated. The Bills are not as bad. Like, and any advanced metric will support that, which is why I'm so afraid of this game. The Cowboys' final 4 games remaining are at Buffalo, at Miami, Detroit at home, and on the road against the Commanders. This is by far the game I'm the most afraid of. This is by far the best quarterback who the Cowboys will have faced all season. I know they just played Jalen Hurts. Geno Smith was amazing against them, surprisingly. But this is it. Like, people talked all about last week how, oh man, the Eagles are this like measuring stick for the Cowboys. They have to prove it. If the Cowboys defense shows up and, shuts down Josh Allen, or if Micah Parsons and company are able to kind of lock him down, like that will be my confidence that they can go into the playoffs and hang with anybody, because this is the wild horse. Like if you can tame this monster, like you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point about the Eagles first, like the Eagles, I agree with you. They haven't been. I feel like they've had every bounce that needed to go right all season. So they've been winning games, but it hasn't been because they've like really just been this dominant. I don't know. It's been weird. Now, to your point about the Bills, I agree completely. I think that's been my biggest. I think that's why I've been so upset with Sean McDermott, because it's like, look, we have the talent, we have the, like, Josh will make the plays. You, at the end of the game, even when we lose, he has 340 yards and two or whatever. Like, it's an amazing showing of talent, but for some reason we can't win all three phases together. For some reason, the defense in the fourth quarter, head coach that is a defensive minded coach who is now taking over defensive play calling responsibilities, our defense is the one that gives up, whatever against the Eagles in overtime or whatever again.
Mhm.
I need to see Sean McDermott really solidify his role as, like, look, okay, you guys love me. This game against Dallas, like you said, for you, you're nervous about it. For me, I'm not nervous because I feel like you said, if Josh shows up and does his thing, we can do it. I just don't want Sean dude, I just really got this. It's a bad feeling that Sean McDermott is just going to ruin my day. Like, I just got this bad feeling that Sunday I'm going to mute your account because I will not want to hear from you. So I just have that feeling.
I do think that this is a like peace establishing game for the Bills and Bills fans, like in one way or another. Like peace in that, like,
Hmm.
holy crap, like we did it, we survived all this crap, and we beat the Cowboys, and like let's go, like we're onward to the playoffs. Let's figure this out as we go along. Or it's this like, okay, the era is over. You know what I mean? We're just a few weeks away from the end of the regular season. We'll get McDermott out of here. We'll move on. We'll rebuild. But you know what I'm saying? Like, this is I don't want to call it a fork in the road, but like it does feel like it has the potential, because if McDermott and his defense, and I understand there's so many injuries and players missing, and Vaughn hasn't, just talking about on the field, lived up to, I think, what any Bills fan would
Hmm.
have wanted. There's been injuries obviously there as well, but if Dak Prescott's right now the front runner for MVP, if you shut him, no one's been able to shut him down as of late. And if you do, like, I mean, stand tall, because that's a really
Dude,
impressive sort of thing.
I was going back to watch games to prepare for this week, and it's like the last, what was it, like the last five games? Well, three of the last five, you've scored 40 points. The two games you didn't score 40, you scored 31 and 33. And Dak, like, he just doesn't miss, man. And I know that, like, the interception joke, and I know, like, I get it. But at the end of the day, when you watch Dak Prescott in that offense, man, it's like poetry in motion, honest to God. And Brandon Cooks was the perfect pickup for a wide receiver too. You have potential elsewhere on the offense outside of CD Lamb, and then Tony Pollard. Man, I think he's been the best running back in Texas for a long time. I've been saying that for a while.
Right.
I don't know. Like, if I had a team in the NFC to root for, it would be the Cowboys. Like, honest to God, I don't have the hate from the '90s anymore. I really, I love the roster. I love Dak Prescott, and defensively, man, they're hungry. They go get it. Now, that's the thing that I want Josh to take advantage of, though. He has to take advantage of how aggressive the secondary is. Like, those guys go for the interception and the pick six every single time. If you have that ability to kind of, just even with a couple pump fakes, like, add something to your game to where it makes them jump, and then you do something different, because if Josh turns the ball over against this defense, man, they're taking it to the house. They look to take it to the house every time. It's not like interception turnover ratio. No, they look to put points on the board. We cannot do that against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I make this analogy a lot, but like, you ever play a video game and you're kind of like vision starts to blur, but you can't focus. You know what I mean? Because like if you focus, you'll like lose the ness of where you are. Like, you just have to
Hmm.
live in the blur. And I feel like that's when Josh is at his peak, like when he's living in the blur. But in a
Yeah.
weird way, the blur invites so much chaos against the Cowboys defense. So like you have to find the like nirvana of the blur. But if anyone can do that,
Hmm.
like I said, I'm super
Same.
terrified. It's Josh. I asked our mutual buddy Rob Stats Guerrero this when the Cowboys played the Niners, who is the player that we're not talking about that could have like the MVP performance, like come Sunday night, how like, oh man, we should have seen this player like hiding in plain sight. He said Dre Greenlaw, I believe. I could be
Hmm.
wrong if I fact check that, and that take has aged really well. So who is that dude? Like, we all know Josh Allen, we all know Stephon Diggs, we all know, the kind of superstar and headlining names, but who's the name that's playing really well that could be hiding in plain sight that we just aren't seeing?
Khalil Shakir. If we're talking about wide receiver play, and I know I kind of just went in on Gabe Davis a few minutes ago, but Khalil Shakir he's been a breath of fresh air as a wide receiver. He hasn't gotten the snaps yet, but you can tell that the Bills are kind of ramping that up. He's been playing more offensively. A couple weeks ago, he had 100 and I think he had 150 yards receiving. He's one of those guys where when Josh looks his way, it's always in a big moment, and he's always dependable. He doesn't drop passes. And I, honest to God, I think for the rest of this year, the playoffs, if we make it, and then going forward, look for Khalil Shakir to be a big part of the Buffalo Bills offense.
Last couple of quick ones for you, JSpence. Stephon Diggs next year, if he's not playing for the Buffalo Bills, it has to be the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like it can't be anybody else at this point.
It's not even a reality that he would not be a Bill. So I mean, I get it. You're a Cowboys fan, so
This is just it's been a thing that hasn't gone away. And I interviewed Trayvon last year, and he literally said, he was like, tell Cowboys fans to tweet get Stephon Diggs. Like they're so, in my humble opinion, desperate to see this happen. Like to play together. And so
and it's cool though. It's cool.
It's fun. I would do it too. I mean, but like it's not practical for Stephon to be anywhere else. I agree with you. But given that Trayvon just signed his extension with the Cowboys, it's more practical that Stephon would join him in Dallas. And so, like, I don't know that is ever truly in the cards, but it's never going to go away, especially if Stephon continues his mysterious ways, which I'm sure are really entertaining for you.
Okay, so for the sake of your listeners, I'll say, yeah, it would make more sense for Diggs to end up there. I would say if that happens, it would happen when he's like 33. In the year 2026, because the Buffalo Bills have stretched his contract out so much, they've restructured it a couple times. If like this season, if they cut him or trade him during this offseason, 31 million dead cap space. The following year, 22 million dead cap space. So then you got to out in 2026 of 13 million, which is still a big number, but I think the Bills would be willing to do it at that point for a wide receiver that's aging 33 years old. But right now and next year and the following year, Cowboy fans, just relax. Like, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Brandon Cooks. They're probably going to draft another stud too. Just relax. Diggs is in Buffalo.
We just had to ask. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we just had to.
I know.
Last two ones.
He's mine.
You're wearing a red hat for the podcast only audience. With all the throwback helmets happening, why can't we get red Bills helmets? I know Josh like teased everybody. Was it 2 training camps ago? That has to be a thing. If everyone's going to have all these throwback, uniforms and helmets, the Bills have to bring the throwback helmets back.
Well, so apparently what the rule was, you can have everybody gets one alternate helmet apparently, and the Bills have the standing Buffalo, just the red helmet, or it's the white helmet with the red logo. So that's the one that they've used for their right. That's the one they've used for their throwback. So they would have to, I guess, switch it to the red one, and they wouldn't be able to wear the standing Buffalo. And I think at some point it's going to happen. The fans have asked for it for so long. It's going to happen.
I don't want to call you a liar, but just maybe this is material for you to kind of use. The Cowboys, I don't know if you noticed, they technically have 4 helmets that they wear. So they have their standard silver one, and they have the Thanksgiving one, the white one. They put the red stripe for their bicentennial look on the silver helmet. So it's just changing the stripe. And they also take the throwback helmet and they put the normal star that has the white trim. And that's what they wore on Sunday against Philly. So they technically have 4 different helmet variations. Like, if the Bills could only have 2, that's an unfair world. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, I know what you're saying, and I'm on your page. I've argued this with Bills personnel, like with their PR people. I've argued with this about, I've argued this down, and what they have told me is exactly what I've just repeated to you, and it sucks, but it's gonna happen. It absolutely has to happen.
I'll keep fighting that fight with you. Last one before your prediction, and it's early in the week, so you reserve the right to change it. You mentioned a show you've watched. What's a movie or show you want to watch before the year is over? How about that? You got about, what is it, 2-3 weeks?
You know what? I have to and you know what? And I just looked at it earlier, and I'm like, oh, I might do this. I might do it this weekend. I wanted to watch that Loki show. I haven't caught up on Loki yet on the Disney app, but I can't. We got games Saturday. It's 3 games Saturday, and then games Sunday. So it won't be this weekend, but I'll schedule some time to catch up on Loki. It's 2 seasons.
My wife and I, you haven't seen any of it at all? Any of Loki?
Not any of it.
The first season rocks, so you'll enjoy it. The second season, you got to power through the beginning. Just remember that, like, it will not be as great, and you'll be like, man, I kind of want to tap out, but just hang on, it's worth it. I give it the seal of approval. Last thing, prediction. Again, you reserve the right to change. You can predict anything you want. You don't have to give a score or a winner. Maybe you're just like, I think that they'll play well, moderately well. I have no idea what's going to happen. The floor is yours.
Well, what I do think is that it's going to be completely different than what everybody on both sides are probably expecting. I know Cowboys fans are used to, like I just mentioned, the last 5 games, you scored 40 points in three and then 31 and 33 in the other two. So right now, everything is rolling. The Bills over the last 3 weeks, we've been rolling since Joe Brady has taken over as offensive
Right.
coordinator. I think this game is going to come down to like which team is able to really take away something from the other team. So
Mm.
whether that's the Bills defense taking away CeeDee Lamb, or whether that's the Cowboys taking away Diggs, or and it doesn't have to be those guys specifically, but I mean just whoever can take away something is going to be a defensive thing. So I think there will be points, but it's not going to be a 35, 32, 35. It's not one of those games. I think it's going to be low 20s.
I think that's really well said. Kind of a tug of war game, like whoever just
Hmm.
outlasts the other and pulls it over the line. At JSpence the King on Twitter, everyone can check you out throughout the Buffalo Rumblings universe. You've had some really funny tweets this year. I've got to be honest. You went to the game
Thank you.
in Cincinnati, right?
No, I didn't go to the Cincinnati game.
But
No, but
you had a
I,
tweet
I
that
was
was
live.
like, you had a tweet that was like, if the Bills ever want me to go again or like want me to go home, like they got to stop like pulling this off or whatever. It was really, really funny. Um,
they
you
they
know,
they inspire some moments, but I tell you what, man, I got to stop drinking during the game. That's that's what it comes down to.
well, it's Christmas time, so if you're gonna do anything, make sure it's like a cider. You know what I mean? Like keep
Yeah,
warm. I know,
yeah.
where you're at, it's not the coldest climate, but just stick with the holiday themes.
It,
Jay Spence,
it
you're
gets a
the
little
man.
chilly.
Best to you and your family. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, health, wealth, and happiness. But obviously, hope you have some, kind of miserable sports feelings on Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, brother. Same to you, man. Have a great holiday. I'm sure I'll talk to you Sunday, but man, good luck.